The All Blacks are in South Africa. The Stormers are the first side standing in front of them. We've got two potential All Black debutants, a 20-year-old Stormers fly half prodigy making his senior debut against none other than Beauden Barrett, a loose forward who plays like an outside back, and the Springboks still rolling through the Nations Championship with a scrum that seems to produce the same result no matter which front row they select. This is episode 79. Let's get into it. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Bonus Point Podcast. This is episode 79. The greatest rivalry is here. Stormers v All Blacks has finally arrived. This is a huge week for rugby. We're at the beginning of a new version of the All Blacks Springboks rivalry, a full tour, the kind rugby fans have wanted to see more of for a long time. It is not just the 4 test matches that matter. There are build-up games, we've got travel, the squad management, the pressure on fringe players, and the chance to see whether either side has the depth to sustain its identity over an entire tour. Today I'm breaking down the Stormers All Blacks opener, the players I'm watching on both sides, why players like Dayimani are one of the most interesting hybrid forwards in this game for the Stormers, and why the Springbok scrum may be the defining strategic problem for the All Blacks later in the series. First, let's set the scene. Rugby's greatest rivalry. A new alternating touring concept between New Zealand and South Africa. The first tour to South Africa happened around 30 years ago. The 2026 edition brings the All Blacks to South Africa for an 8-match series, 4 provincial matches against the Stormers, the Sharks, Bulls and Lions, followed by a 4-test series against the Springboks. This is what makes this different from a standard rugby championship window. This is built around touring. It gives coaches time to assess their broader squads, lets local teams take a proper crack at the All Blacks, and then builds towards test selections, provides clarity, physical conditions, and momentum. They all should matter. For the All Blacks, every one of these early games is an audition. You are not only trying to win the match in front of you, you're trying to prove you can survive South Africa pressure, you understand the system, you earn a role in that test side. This isn't just a test series with some warm-up games, it's an old school tour, and the Stormers match is the first real pressure test for the All Blacks depth. So, speaking on that, the tour begins tomorrow at DHL Stadium in Cape Town. 10 a.m. for me, which is perfect. I don't have to wake up too early. I'm going to be working, but I'm going to chuck it on the TV with the Stormers hosting the All Blacks. For the South African franchise, this is the kind of fixture that means more than a normal mid-season game. It's the chance to test your players against the black jersey in front of a home crowd before the wider country shifts fully into Springbok Test Series mode. The Stormers have selected a side with a real mix of established leaders, proven URC contributors, and young players given an enormous opportunity. They've got their front 5 like Matongo, Venter, Fouché, Smith, Evans, loose trio, Dayimani, Roos in the back line. You've got Khan, you've got Ahmad, you've got Roche and captain Ruhan Nel in the midfield. You've got the back 3, Sinatla and Gallant. That loose forward combination, though, is just so worth noting. And I really want to focus on Roos and Dayimani. Fury were also the combination that they started in the 2022 URC Grand Final when the Stormers won the title at DHL Stadium. So even though there is youth at 9 and 10, there's a lot of experience and chemistry around this team. When I look at the Stormers side, I see 2 potential ways they can attack this game. The first is traditionally South African. Stay competitive at set piece, make the All Blacks work at the scrum and the line-out time, bring physicality through the tight 5 and make the All Blacks earn every clean exit. And the second option is much more Stormers specific. You use the back 3. You use your fullback. You get Sinatla and Zas into space. You make the match chaotic after kick returns or turnover ball. This is not a side that has to play one-dimensional rugby. So the question is whether they can find the right balance. Against the All Blacks, if you play too much without accuracy, they punish you. But if you only try to contain them, they can gradually squeeze you through tempo and possession. We've seen a variety of their players that are maybe young or maybe debuting, but they've got a lot of potential and they can really break you open. So the Stormers need enough to control to stay in the contest, but enough ambition to turn their athletes loose. The player that I'm most excited about in the backs, young fly half Yaqeen Ahmed, 20 years old. He's been handed his senior Stormers debut in a massive spot, number 10 against the All Blacks. He arrives after starring for the junior Springboks in the World Under-20s, winning the campaign, and this opportunity has come because Sash Feinberger's away with the Springboks, while Matthew is injured as well. There's no gentle introduction here. Across from him is Beauden Barrett, a player Ahmed looked up to and one of the most experienced and decorated fly halves in the modern game. Barrett starts in the number 10 jersey for his first All Blacks match of the year, but he's experienced, he's composed, he may not be perfect, but by God, he's one of the most talented and one of the best players you'll ever see in an All Blacks number 10 jersey. For Ahmed, I don't think the Stormers are looking for perfection. I think they're just looking for composure. Can he manage field position? Can he make his defensive reads? Can he connect with Khan quickly enough? Can he take the right option when the Stormers have a chance to counter? And perhaps most importantly, when the All Blacks put pressure on him, does he continue to play his game, or does he steer away from it, or does he even fold under the pressure? Because that's the kind of debut that tells you a lot about a young fly half. Not necessarily whether he wins the game, but whether he looks like he belongs in a game at this level. Because this is his debut in a full-fledged professional game. The other player who really stands out to me is Dayimani in the number 7 jersey. He is the definition of the modern hybrid loose forward. He has the pace. He's got balance. He's got great hands, footwork like an outside back. He brings it from the back row. He can carry into contact, but he is the most dangerous when the defensive structure breaks and he gets time and space to attack. The comparison that comes to my mind for New Zealand listeners is Ollie Mathis from Waikato and the Crusaders. Mathis is another loose forward type with the versatility and skill set to cover the wing, and he can be a genuine attacking threat in wide channels rather than simply a forward operating around the ruck. Now, I'm not saying they're identical players. There are different body types, different rugby environments, different career stages, but the shared idea is this: both challenge the old expectation of what a loose forward is supposed to do. For the All Blacks, Dayimani becomes a problem when they kick loosely, lose their line speed in transition, or allow Stormers players to create second phase shape. He can run a backline style support line. He can work the edge of a ruck, become a link player. He can exploit mismatches in wide channels. If the Stormers are going to create moments that change the game, Dayimani is one of the first players I would circle on my list of players to make an impact. Beyond Ahmed and Dayimani, I'm watching Evan Roos as the gain line carrier. If he can get the Stormers moving forward early, it allows Ahmed to play with much more freedom. Fury is the experience piece also in that back row. His breakdown instincts and the ability to make the ugly moments uncomfortable matter, especially against an All Black side that wants quick ruck ball. Then you've got Gallant, who brings vision and counter-attack. You've got Sinatla, who is always been a finisher, who only needs one poorly defended edge or one loose kick to create damage. And Nell, as the captain at 13, is going to have a major role in organising the midfield defensively against a backline with Barrett, ALB, Billy Proctor and Rieko Ioane, a very experienced test backline. Now to the All Blacks. This side contains plenty of experience, like I said, but it is also clearly a selection statement from Dave Rennie, where 2 players are in line to make their debut off the bench. It's not like we haven't seen this before, but I think when you're looking at the players, Lauaki and Josh Jacob, it's a bold selection, but logical way to use a tour opener to get them into the environment, let them feel the speed and atmosphere, see if they can execute in a meaningful game. I have the utmost confidence that both of them can really make an impact in this type of game. Josh Jacob, especially, I've been watching a lot of his games supporting the Chiefs. I think he's got what it takes to come off the bench and really make an impact. And the starting 15 tells us plenty too. Patrick Tuipulotu, I've spoken about him ad nauseum for a few years now. He's now captaining the side. Fabian Holland returns after recovering from a shoulder injury. That is huge, especially for the locking department, which I'll go into in a bit. Beauden Barrett back at fly half. Rieko Ioane from his island sabbatical on the left wing instead of in the centres. We expected that, but we now see definitively that Rennie is looking at him as an outside back and not a centre. It's not like he couldn't slot in throughout the game, but he's being selected at wing. Billy Proctor starting at 13 and Josh Morby being selected at fullback, who is usually an out-and-out fullback. He's really going to make an impact in this position, I believe. The selection I find most interesting is the outside back picture because there has already been debate about the omission of Hurricanes winger Fehi, particular after his Super Rugby try-scoring form, while Rico has been selected on the wing rather than centre. It tells me Rennie is not treating this opener purely as a reward for provincial form. He's setting up combinations he believes can function in the context of this tour. There is a difference between selecting a player because they were hot in Super Rugby and selecting a player because you believe they fit tactical demands of a South African tour. But that being said, for the All Blacks, the key is not to get caught trying to win the entire game, entire tour in game one. They need to be accurate. They need to manage territory. They need to win enough set-piece ball, which has been a struggle for them, and make sure their attack doesn't hand Stormers cheap transition opportunities. Looking ahead, South Africa's number one ranking is now under pressure in Buenos Aires. Results in the Nations Championships can shift the standings before the Springboks and All Blacks even meet in the Test series. Rankings are not the whole story because there's so many things that go into World Rugby ranking and matchups and injuries and things like that, but they do shape the narrative because if South Africa stay number one, they go into the series as a team everyone expects to beat. If New Zealand take over the top spot, then the pressure shifts a different way. The All Blacks become the side trying to prove their return to the summit is real, while the Boks then have to chase and respond with a different mindset. I don't think they'll navigate anything differently if the 1 or 2 comes into factor, but there's always those little bits and pieces that really dwell on your mind. Either way, the 4 tests are not going to be decided by rankings. They're going to be decided by who can impose their preferred style over multiple weeks. And that's what I want to talk about with the scrum dominance, because one of the biggest storylines and something that has just been baffling is the Springbok scrum. From their first 3 Nations Championship rounds, the consistency of their front row production despite rotation is insane. South Africa have not simply relied on one untouchable starting front row, and we never thought they would, but they have changed combinations over and over and over again and brought World Cup winning players back into the mix, rotated heavily. They still retain the same fundamental ability to create pressure at scrum time. It's truly impressive. This is what makes this Springbok pack different. The scrum is not just a restart for them. It's a tactical weapon, a way to win penalties, a way to change field position, a way to force yellow card pressure, drain an opposition pack and turn a close match into a psychological fight. We've seen a few test matches where the All Blacks in particular, if we have to go scrum after scrum after scrum, we have to make early substitutions or we have to really navigate and change our game plan to then give these front row players a break, make tactical decisions over and over again. The All Blacks may see the scrum as a platform to launch their phase play. The Springboks often see it as an opportunity to take something from you immediately. So for New Zealand, that is a strategic challenge. You do not necessarily have to dominate South Africa at the scrum to win a test, but you cannot repeatedly lose penalties there because every scrum penalty gives South Africa territory points, another line out, and the chance to build pressure through the maul or another scrum. So the question I pose to everyone out there, what do the All Blacks do? Do the All Blacks try to meet the Boks head on with their own physicality? I don't think so. I think they need to focus on scrummaging well enough to stay neutral and make the game faster, wider, and more demanding away from the set piece. It's not ideal, it's not pretty, and it's not like the Boks can't do that as well, but it's got to be a balance. It's got to be something about not overplaying your hand. And I think, again, we always see it with the bomb squad. South Africa's real advantage is not only their first choice front row or their starting front row. It's their second, third, and reshuffled front rows that keep producing the same outcome over and over and over again. The case for the All Blacks is that they can stress the Springboks through pace, skill, ruck speed, and the amount of ball they force big forwards to defend over long passages. Dave Rennie's side, although it has been a small window to try and understand what they can produce, it has the personnel to create a more fluid, multi-phase game. If they exit cleanly, avoid handing the Boks easy set-piece opportunities, and make South Africa defend in repeated phases, they can test the conditioning, spacing, and discipline of even the best defensive system. But there are a few non-negotiables. The first one is the All Blacks lineout. it has to be reliable. Against South Africa, you cannot afford to give away easy possession or set piece penalties. And I think over the last few matches under Dave Rennie, we've seen, I think, roughly an 85% success rate at line-out time when the Springboks are humming at the moment. I think they're in plus 90, 93, 94%. We can't have 10% difference in the line-out execution. Second, their kick game has to be excellent. Poor kicks against South Africa give them either aerial opportunities or attacking platforms. With all their talented players who are awesome under the high ball, they're great on counter-attack. We can't give them that platform. And their breakdown discipline has to be clean. The Boks love a game that becomes territorial, physical, and penalty-driven. The All Blacks need enough structure to avoid feeding that machine while still being willing to play the rugby that makes them dangerous. So when we're thinking about as this tour progresses, these provincial games are going to shape a few major test selection questions. Who gives the All Blacks their best front row stability against the Springbok scrum? Which locks become the preferred line-out combination? Which is the best loose forward balance, pure size and defense or mobility and link play? And in the backs, what is the combination that gives them the best blend of kicking, aerial security, defensive communication and strike power? Those decisions are why the Stormers match matters. It's not a test, but it may be the first time certain players make the case that they belong in one. So All Black selections, I feel like you've got several players who feel like they're on prove-it duty, desperate to make an impression, force their way into test conversation. And I really value what Simon Parker has been saying in the media this week, because he did say this isn't a charity. He hasn't been given any game time, and he said everyone doesn't deserve a crack. He hopes he can do his job, and if he does a good job, he should be rewarded in his performance come test time. That's the All Black attitude of old. When selections are up in the air, you're not getting too much time, you're not getting too much opportunity, you put your head down and you work. And I would say Fehi's doing the same thing without minimal selections. He's going into training, he's prepping the team, he's getting them ready when guys like Rieko Ioane and Caleb Clarke are being selected. Although I think Caleb Clarke is a great player under the high ball, he could be potentially that impact player off the bench. There's just something about Fehi that I know he can just break open a team with his pure athleticism and skill. I think before I leave today, I do want to talk about a faction that hasn't really been spoken about a lot, which is the locking department. Because I think the selection battle is going to be very tough. And like I said before, one of the big red flags in that selection piece that needs to be perfect is the set piece gap. How efficient the locks can be to support this. You've got to understand the 94% or 93% or whatever it is in the Springbok line-out success, that is without Etzebeth and without De Jager. The rugby media has spent a lot of time talking about the loose forwards, the combinations there, Duplessis, Creefy, missing out on selection and a variety of other positions. And by all means, that is all quality conversation that is going on. And I was big on Dupes missing out. I was big on who should be in the loose forward trio, all that type of stuff. But this selection in the locks is going to make or break this All Black side, in my opinion. Fabian Holland returning from this injury is huge for us, because if we're assuming that the All Blacks are going to go with a 6-2 split, we've got to have a lot of confidence in our locks, and also that person who's potentially playing in that number 6 jersey, whether it's a Tupou Vaa'i or someone else in that area, we've got to fix up our line out against a strong Springboks line out. In my opinion, I do think Toops should play 6, provides us a little bit more variety in that line-out department, in the opportunities we can find. I think Sam Darry has been outstanding. Patrick Tuipulotu is always my guy that I would love to bring off the bench, especially against the Boks. His physicality, his leadership, his experience. Fabian Holland and Josh Lord, in my opinion, are fighting out that last spot. I think we'll see what Fabes can do, but from a player who last year was a breakthrough player of the year, what he brought to this All Blacks team last year, he can really provide us with a solid platform and a solid opportunity to get this game going. So that is the opening picture of the rugby's greatest rivalry tour. For the Stormers, it is an opportunity to show that their young talent and their attacking identity can stand up against the All Blacks. I think a lot of people assume this is going to be an All Blacks slaughter, but the Stormers are a very talented team, even when a lot of their Springbok players are not in the mix. Ahmed's composure at 10. Roos at the gain line. Dayimani when the game opens up. All of these are going to be massive weapons for them. For the All Blacks, it's an opportunity to establish the tone of the tour. Get their new faces involved, build combinations, start answering the big questions before the Springbok tests. And for the Springboks, the looming question is simple. Can anybody find a way to stop that pack, particularly that rotating front row system? Frankly, a lot of positions in that domain, in that squad, got a lot of people that they can slot in who can really get the job done, and Russie is confident in them. But turning the scrum into the most influential phase of the series is going to be huge. Let me know what you think is the player, or who is the player to watch this weekend. Ahmed, Dayimani, Beauden Barrett's return at 10, or one of the new All Blacks getting their first cap. Before we wrap up, make sure you tune in next week because we'll be joined by Dane Sherritt from Kick On Rugby. Dane's content blends strong takes with a genuine insight and great analysis. So I'm really excited to have him a part of the conversation post this first match with the Stormers, because he legitimately is rugby media's smart, opinion-driven coverage of the global game. So really excited to have him on next weekend and chat about all the matches going on following the Stormers match. Until then, enjoy Stormers versus All Blacks. Keep an eye on Ahmed and Dayimani in that Storms team. Let me know who you think makes the biggest statement in that opening match of the tour on socials. Thank you for listening to episode 79 of the Bonus Point Podcast. Subscribe, leave a review, share it with a rugby mate, and I'll catch you next week. Have a good one.